And his critics had any less expectations. In fact, he was to put the fear of the Lord in corrupt government officials. Maybe he did. But after almost 3 years and several other epistles from the man whose fierceness in the public eye was fast eroding, the bombshell dropped.
So some breaking news reaching us right now. Special Prosecutor Martin Amidu has resigned. Martin Amidu was appointed as a special prosecutor. He was appointed to the office by President Kufuor. He has in recent times expressed some challenges. In fact, he issued a press release in which he indicated he had some frustrations with the people who had been assigned, the investigators who had been seconded.
He says that this is to inform the public that I resigned from my position as the Special Prosecutor of the Office of the Special Prosecutor with immediate effect upon the submission of my letter of resignation, which was received at the Office of the President today. I should not ordinarily be announcing my resignation to the public myself, but the traumatic experience I went through from 20th October 2020 to 2nd November 2020 cautions against not bringing my resignation as the Special Prosecutor with immediate to the notice of the Ghanaian public and the world.
In fact, we predicted that the very time Matamidu was appointed. I remember speaking on your network, I had said that the president was holding the tail of a tiger. If he continues to hold the tail, the tiger will pull him everywhere. If he leaves the tail, the tiger will turn around and consume him. Now, the only option was for Matamidu, if frustrated, would resign. It has come to pass.
It's disappointing. It is something that was preventable. It's shocking because the nature of the detail that Mr. Martin Amidu provides to receive his appointment letter almost 2 years later, and to suggest that after he did a JAPA report, the subsequent proceedings make it clear to him that he was never ever expected to provide an independent report. Sounds very much like what happened to Mr. Daniel Dadzie not too long ago.
Ghanaians, they are not with this MPC government are influencing. I mean, they have an influence of it. They are not allowing him to do what he wants to do. So that means that there's no need for him to be in that office. you can't just put somebody over there and then you control the person.
Somebody is influencing him to resign, or the pressure on him for the work is too much.
If you are not some hope, and you know, I think it's not well done. You know what we are expecting him to do. You know, I don't think he did it. Confused, so we have to resign for maybe to give a space for somebody who can do it very better.
Nobody requested of him to do it. Nobody stopped him. When he voluntarily provided a copy, his initial comment to the president and asked for comment, he brought it on his own.
We're disappointed because whilst we have refused to get into the merit of Mr. Amidu's points and those of the president, we're a bit disappointed that if Mr. Amidu really thought that the executive was encroaching on his independence,
So after a round of exchanges between Amidu and the presidency, it is difficult to draw the true facts of what happened while he was in office. But in the midst of all these, one question arises. Where does Mr. Amidu's resignation leave Ghana's fight against corruption? Tonight we connect with friends from home and abroad to ask, what do you do when corruption fights back? Connecting with us in studio, Peter Kofi Kielsen, university graduate, Golda Na Adaku Ado. She's a strategist, governance, leadership and policy. Also joining us is Esther Armour. She's Executive Director of the Armour Institute of Emotional Justice, and she penned a beautifully written article that featured on the front page of the BNFT this week. It's titled Amidu and Rawlings, the Lionized and the Bastardized. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thanks for connecting with us. Also connecting with us remotely will be Forth. He's a friend of the show. You know him very well. He's a broadcaster based in the UK. And George Poku, who is a Ghanaian accountant based in Georgia, USA. I understand we have George with us. Hi, George.
Hello, sir.
Well, my name is Daniel. I only call my father, sir, George.
Out of respect for people, I always call everybody sir.
I appreciate your respect, but let's keep it at Daniel. You're scaring me already. Okay,
Dad.
I want to start off with a controversial approach, looking at the way we styled this conversation. And of course, you can connect with us via WhatsApp 055 11 11 997. We'll also let you know how you can connect with us via social media. Now, Esther said, and she says that I now engage the resignation as a lesson in individual versus institution. Individual versus institution. But Esther, is that not an assumption that what Martin Amidu said is sacrosanct, given the fact that the presidency has denied a large part of those allegations?
Good evening, Daniel. Good evening to everybody listening. There is one simple reality that we must face. In what world did anybody imagine the president would accept the allegations of Martin Amidu, literally days away from an election for his second term? The bigger issue is not that the president accepted or denied it. There was no way that he was going to accept the allegations made by Martin Amidu in his resignation letter. I think the issue is a bigger one for we the people, which is about Martin Amidu is a lion. He is a lion in the fight against corruption. Universally respected. Whether liked or disliked, he's universally respected. So the bigger question is, how does the institution of corruption, how do you put chinks in its armor when it is so robust, it is so entrenched, and it loses as a lion of the caliber of a Martin Amidu? But I think the back and forth between the parties, with due respect to media, is a waste of journalistic time. It is not the conversation, because corruption decimates the progress of this country. And whilst the minutiae, the details, the back and forth, from Kojo Opong and Nkrumah, then this one said this, and then that is the nature of how we do politics in this country. We would politicize the microphone that I'm speaking to if it could win me a vote. That's the nature of how we move. So the question becomes, how do we reckon with the building of a robust institution that can fight corruption, witnessing how this has fallen down? What are the lessons that we need to learn, and how willing are we to learn them? Because Martin Amidu will be fine. He will go on and fight another day. But that's not the issue. The question becomes, how are we building an institution that can confront corruption? Because I think we imagine, because Martin Amidu is the giant that he is, that as an individual he can transcend an institution.
And I saw you write that immediately after. You said that in Ghana we imagine individual ability transcends institutional power. It does not. Corruption is an institution, not an individual. And Martin Amidu's resignation is a profound example of an individual confronting an institution. It's so lovely the way you put the words together, by the way. I must comment on that. But Golda, I would... Thank you. The journalist in me will be stubborn enough to still bring back the fact that we cannot ignore the fact that a different version of events has been presented, so that it becomes one person's word against the other, even to the extent that the board of the Office of Special Prosecutor has expressed disappointment in his resignation, thinking that he may not have as much grounds as he feels he does.
And what's the question here you're asking me?
Well, because Esther proceeds, on the assumption that look, the government will not. Yes, this is an individual, but government says no one is against anyone. This is one person who is being eccentric, if I can paraphrase the rhetoric from that side.
I think that both sides have held back a lot. Absolutely. And if anybody should be able to really take responsibility, it should be government, because they are the ones who gave him the legislative power to even exist and do his work. They're the ones providing resources for him, and they were the ones who would make it possible. And so I agree with Esther that if they were the ones providing everything, they also have the power to frustrate it. And from my experience in the heart of government, it's extremely possible that the man was indeed being overly monitored or bugged, or being given the impression that he was not alone and he did not feel comfortable enough to go ahead with his work. And of course, nobody would accept that at this point in time in their efforts to win another tenure at governing. To me, corruption is like gossip. Gossip no get leg, right? Corruption no get leg. It be people where they carry them.
Exactly.
So if we're supposed to resolve corruption, the question is who has the most power? And it's the government. And if the excuses are coming, let's assume that they are right. Martin Amidu failed. Let's assume. What next should be the question that is being tackled and answered. It should be part of the campaign they're carrying out. So I think we should look at them for more. I really don't expect we will find more from them.
Interesting. Kofi, so let me just make it simple. Is corruption fighting Martin Amidu back?
Well, definitely. I would agree with your question. And it's quite clear and evident that 2 to 3 years ago, when Martin Amidu was appointed by the president, the country was in a jubilant mood, celebrating the appointment as a catalog to somewhat witch-hunt political opponent. 2 to 3 years on, we have supported an enthusiast of this government, rather bashing Martin Amidu for investigating certain parts of the state. And so it's more like if you domesticate a wild beast thinking that it once bit your enemy, never labor under the impression that it cannot bite you back. And so it is clearly a matter of fact that corruption has driven Martin Amidu out. And from the reports that we have seen with the clapbacks and the exchanges of letters and all, we do realize that the president did invite Martin Amidu on to discuss the report of Ejapa. I mean, that alone is an act of seeming compromise. You cannot hide under the curtain of a president or somewhat a king to call a constitutional officer, an independent constitutional officer, to discuss a report that somewhat implicates your appointee or would badly inure to the electoral prospect of fortunes of your government.
Why not? What's wrong with him calling Mr. Amidu?
Okay, so what is there to discuss? And what do you prospectively think the fallout of the conversation would be? Would Martin Amidu be bold enough to say no to the president's request should he make them? And you and I know that Martin has said that the finance minister was in his house on 21st of October, and if it does him, he will come out and spill the beans on whatever discussion that went on. And so the key, most important thing is that the constitution, the independent infrastructure is being weakened. And right from the First Republic to the Fourth Republic, we've had the corruption being systemic and endemic throughout. And somewhat Mr. Akufo-Addo came out with a policy proposal to set up the office of special prosecutor. After a period of 2 to 3 years, it looks like nothing good really came out of it. And so it is a matter of the systemic nature of politics, corruption in our system. And so it isn't the case that one person will come and then all of a sudden uproot corruption from the system. And let me tell you what happened in the UK in 2009. There was a scandal of, I think, expenses, scandal with regards to parliamentarians who had misused or, misappropriated their allowances and certain monies that were allotted to them. You know the current leader of the Labour Party, Keir Rodney Starmer. He was Director of Public Prosecutions under the Crown Prosecution Service of the United Kingdom. And he sought the prosecution of 3 Labour MPs, his own party. That time, I think Gordon Brown was the Prime Minister. And so if you have such a competent person leading such an office and prosecuting, investigating, and fighting corruption regardless of the forces of power, then you should know that we need to build a strong institution to fight corruption.
This is exactly what the Office of Special Prosecutor was supposed to create.
Exactly.
A creator that would not be afraid to take on members of government because, first of all, the person in there is not from the political party which formed government.
Exactly.
But Foss has also joined us. Hi, Foss. Let me start off with George, though, on Zoom. So it seems like there's a general consensus in the studio that, yes, Martin Amidu does have a point. I love how Kofi brought in the fact that even the meeting with Mr. Amidu should not have happened. I don't know if you agree with that, George. And does that mean that, look, Mr. Amidu was doomed from the very beginning?
Dan, there are a couple of things that they are saying that I agree with. But the fundamental issue that we need to understand is his office is not a constitutionally set office. So we need to go back and do a referendum to amend the constitution that we have so that this office will be an autonomous office that is not tied to any presidency, is not tied to any government. It is something that the people have put in and they can be elected on, or it needs to be detached from party politics, period. And the constitution will have to get the right to do that. Until we are able to do that, you can appoint people that are on the opposing side of the field in order for it to look like you are okay, but it is not going to be effective. Because again, like Esther said, corruption is an institution by itself. So for anybody to be able to fight it, that person that is fighting it needs to have the backbone of a constitution and not a presidency. And that is where I see this problem being. That is the fundamental problem we have in this issue. Martin Abedi is right in everything he said. The government, I think the office of the president and all the rebuttal that they are coming up with, they are also trying to explain themselves. But we need to understand what the fundamental issue is. Like Esther said, individual against an institution. So unless you make it an institution against an institution, it is going to be very difficult. And the only way we can do it is to have a constitutional amendment that makes it an office that is part of the country. And it is not controlled by the presidency or whichever party is coming in to appoint them, but rather the people in the country, based on the hope and the trust they have in that person, should elect them.
And I envision sort of a separation of the Office of Attorney General from the Office of Minister for Justice. That should begin to head towards what you're saying. Foss is also with us, but if you're listening to us and you disagree with Martin Amidu's move, hit us up on WhatsApp, 055 11 11 997, 055 11 11 997. We'll call you back. Let me take Foss's initial comments, and then we'll come back and deal with the nitty-gritties of what could have been done differently and what should be done going forward. Foss, what are your initial thoughts about this entire story?
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for getting me back on this platform again. I really appreciate the fact that you've taken time to look into it. But it's my first and foremost take on this whole Martin Amidu's issue is the fact that we are not being real as a nation. We are not being real to the problems that we have as a nation. We've spoken about corruption over and over again. And I take my lead from something that happened some time ago in Ghana, where they got Justice P.D. Anin to write a report about corruption. And I quote, he said, corruption is a deadly virus that is eating its way into the body of politics. If it is not checked and brought under control, it will seriously undermine the effectiveness of the present or any future government of Ghana. One thing is having a special prosecutor. The other thing is, what powers are really available, or what kind of powers are really available to that special prosecutor? What Martin Amidu did, in my fair opinion, I really concur with him, because a similar thing has happened in the UK even today. An independent person was tasked to look into the roles and how the Home Office minister actually behaved, and he found out that she broke the ministerial code and actually helped, being an independent person, advise the government or the prime minister to actually take the course of what a minister has to actually subscribe to. Unfortunately, the prime minister went against that, and that independent person has resigned. So I do accept the fact that Martin Amidu has actually resigned from his role, but I just don't like the brouhaha that comes, the politicking and the bashing that comes with his resignation. I really, really think that as Ghanaians, we need to look into ourselves and ask ourselves, are we corrupt as a people? And is it a canker, or is it something that we can keep sweeping under the carpet?
I often ask myself, George is laughing, I don't know why. Esther, I often ask myself that with a lot of the people heeing and hawing about corruption, will they run a red light if they're going late to work, or call their friend to try and get them a job? Is it that we are corrupt as a people and we only want to see these ideals elsewhere?
I take issue with the notion of we as Ghanaians corrupt. In the 21st century world, there is not a nation on the planet from which there isn't corruption against different levels. So I think it's very important that we categorize what we're talking about and don't lump it all into one space. I really agree with the gentleman who spoke about the importance of creating autonomy, that's what the lesson of Martin Amidu's resignation is. It is inevitable. If appointed by the president, then what you have is going to be a relationship about a mutilated power. There's an inevitability about it, no matter how great the individual that you hire. So the gentleman who spoke about what is the constitutional amendment we need to create in order to have an autonomous Office of Special Prosecution. And I would like to see an entire show that breaks down what would need to happen, civil society organizations, academic institutions, to really engage what we'd have to create. And the reason why I say that is so often we compare apples with oranges. So people have made comparisons with what's happening in the Labour Party in the UK. You are comparing a political system, hundreds of years old, to one that is, in comparison, a child. The nature of our political leadership is to invest an extraordinary amount of power in the president. Power corrupts. That's just the nature of it. And so if we're going to really commit to the office of a special prosecutor, the thing we have to advocate is autonomy. So it's not a question of the blame game between Martin Amidu and the office of the president will literally continue as people cast their votes, because they may see political point scoring on either side. So that is inevitable. What I would love to see is a media that says, if the question of corruption is recognized as institutional, what is the institutional sanction we need to build in order to not just create an autonomy, but to uphold and sustain it?
It's a very important question, Esther.
Yes, because that's a very different conversation. And then who should fund it? How should it be funded? Should it be funded by taxpayers' money? Do you separate it completely, which of course you should, from the political powers? The reason I say that is when you think about the English political system, started off with monarchies and the head of and the religious powers having extraordinary power to just execute people. It was all about corruption and who held power and how they were able to abuse their power. There was an evolution to what we have, to what they have now. The question for Ghana is, what are we evolving to create, and what is the lesson Martin Amidu can teach us? He shows us that without autonomy, the very best of us can fail against the giant that is corruption. And so I'm less interested with the back and forth about the president, because the truth is,
and more interested in the remedies.
Yes, but not even that both are invested in holding the line of their
Right,
perspective.
right.
And that is to be expected. But we, the people, saviors don't topple corruption. But strong institutions can at least challenge it in ways that we haven't seen. So that's the question. What does it take? What would it take to build a strong institution, and where would we get the money? And if we can build a cathedral, we can build an institution to fight corruption.
I was going to come to you anyway, Golda. I don't know why you raised your hand.
Forgive me. I teach so many times that sometimes I just raise my hand out of just habit.
Okay, so go ahead with your contribution.
I'm thinking about the question about the remedies. The issue about corruption is that until we are able to understand that Amidu could not have made any progress until the proper systems and structures were in place, we would still be beating about the same thing and not progressing. He needed to have, probably if I were in his shoes, the first thing I would have spent my time doing was being able to put legal structures in place that permit him to work like he needed to, which meant that he did not have to rely on personnel that were forwarded from spaces he believed were corrupt. People who he didn't have enough confidence in to do non-corrupt work, right? He would need to have put those structures in place. He would need to have laid out all the systems, the procedures, and things that would make it happen and have it passed if needed. If these things are not done, we will have the best people come and take the same position and nothing would happen. So if we want to remedy this, we need to agree that, like the way we've got the right information bill, but it's sitting there waiting to be implemented. We need to go beyond the fact that the Office of the Special Prosecutor has been created. We need to create that buffer zone.
But this is actually the question I was going to ask you, Golda, because there's so much political will needed to do that. Because here is Martin Amidu, who, if you read his accounts, made a copious attempts. I mean, he tried as much as possible to be independent, even structurally. I'm talking about in terms of the physical structure. But there's a lot of political will required. How do we navigate that?
We can't navigate anything where we are now. We are in a stage where Ghanaians will be the same people to wail and gnash their teeth about the mess that we're in, but we'll turn around and tell you, if you vote for this person and Kopebia and Tiudia Tuma and DCMPP, what are we doing? We are stuck in the mess, but we don't want to take responsibility to fix it. So we are going to be in this situation until we implode. And if we implode and we don't take the responsibility to, reset ourselves, somebody will come from outside and reset it for us. But I think we're on a trajectory of implosion. And we can't come out of it until we face the fact that as Ghanaians, we don't have enough people with the mindset to appreciate that we need to change the way we vote.
Kofi, is it down to
impact
voting?
The situation.
Is it just down to voting?
Yes, it is. All I believe is responsible political leadership. A leadership that doesn't fight corruption. A leadership that opens way for corruption to be fought. And so just like two women have espoused, corruption is endemic. It is part of our system. You need political will to fight it. And so if you had a president that was going to guarantee the independence of Martin Amidu to fight corruption, then why not? And so in the future, we are likely to create and continue to create officers in that regard, give them very flamboyant titles and names to work, but then we will still find interference and intrusion in the performances of the activities. And so if you have the figurehead ensuring that their independence are guaranteed, their works are performed at their various spaces and paces, you'd have corruption fought. If not at the barest minimum, you have it fought at a satisfactory rate. So that is what I strongly believe in. And I should think that corruption is more cultural, because if you look at the cultural fiber, you say it's oba sebio, oba ye bibigu nice wa you try and all of these things. And so if you have your relative in any public office and etc., and that person commits an irresponsible conduct, you are binded by a certain cultural orientation not to penalize the person. So that is part of our culture. Until we are able to create that sharp distinction between administration, official or formal administration, and our typical culture, I think would be able to grab their whip on corruption.
You know what? As true as what you're saying is, because I can't in good conscience sit here and say that no, it is not in our culture that if you have honey on your hand, you don't wipe it against. Right? Yeah, you don't wipe it against it. I can't say that. But I've been challenged by what Esther was saying earlier. Leaders are supposed to stand at a point in the future, look behind them, and draw the rest of the people with them. Why do we? And I should probably circle around to George with this point. George, why is it that we praise all of these people who are running for president? We call them super intelligent. We say that they finished their degrees in so many years because we see something in them that we want to see in ourselves, and we even want to aspire to be them. Is it that our society is not capable of creating, or our system is not capable of creating leaders who can truly challenge institutions like corruption?
No, Dan, I think our system and our culture is able to create leaders that can challenge corruption. But again, we need to go back to the fundamental issue, which is any institution that you want to establish or anything that you want to establish needs to have a place that it draws its power from. The 1992 constitution that was drafted with an executive heavy power. That right now, we as citizens of Ghana and we as people that are in Ghana need to start looking at it, at how we are going to find a way to start decentralizing some of the power that was placed on the executive when that thing was written. And the thing about it is, nobody right now that is either in the executive, legislature, or judiciary wants to challenge the powers that they have been given, because if you are enjoying from that power, how are you going to fight against that power? So it will have to take the nation as a whole, be individuals, to start asking for this change to happen, because until this change happens, everything we are talking about is not going to be good. Think about this one fact. That is the one fact I want to lay down. Politicians in Ghana do not really and truly have their own money to even go out to go get people to come and put them in power. They borrow money based on ex gratia and things in order for them to get the power. So when you have a system like this, that there is no constitutionally, there is no law that is saying that you need to show us that you have the ability to be able to campaign with your own money before you can even assume power. That a teacher, a hairdresser that has no money or nothing can just rise to become an MP and things like that. I don't have any problem with that. Let me say that as a fact. But when you have situations whereby somebody is sponsoring you for you to get to the place that you are, instantly that institutionalized corruption is going to go, because once you get there, that person that sponsored you is going to come back and say that, hey, but now that I have made you get there.
You're still speaking my language, George, because I remember reading Stacey Abrams, the now world famous Stacey Abrams of Georgia, her bio, and I realized that even at a point she had student loans and she was running for office. She was such an ordinary person who just through grassroots support was able to rise to the position that she has. I think that there's a question that we must ask ourselves about funding political parties. But before I come to that point, we put out a word that if you want to speak about this Martin Amidu matter, send us a text. William did so, and he's joined us via phone. William, thanks for connecting with us. So you disagree with Martin Amidu's move. Why?
No, I didn't disagree with Amidu. For me, the issue is simple. The buck stops at the president. That's it. Because if he gives the order, everything will fall in place. We have countries where the president appointed the minister stole, they brought him publicly and killed him. It sets example for the other ministers. No, if, assuming your own house, you're in a community, and report comes that one of your children has done something wrong, and you defend your child, what message are you sending to the other community members and even your other children? But if you discipline that child, that's an example.
Well, William, with very, very pensive thoughts there. If you do, so who is that who will discipline the child here? It's such a question. Okay, I want to ask.
Dan, it comes down to this. It comes down to the person that has the heart of the nation, the good of the nation at heart, and is willing to lose all elections and drive home the point that is needed. It comes up with what I call a selfless leader that is not looking for people to hail him, but rather trying to do the right thing for the country.
George, I have a question. If you have such a selfless leader and he loses the election, where does that leave the nation?
No.
That was going to be my question to you.
No. We did.
George, let me crave your indulgence here. Allow Force to make his point so that we can move there. Yeah, Force, please.
Dan, thank you very much. I just want to make 2 points, and I'll make them really briefly and very quickly as well. It's more to do with the fact that we tend to go, we keep, please forgive me because I'm just quiet. I had the name written down, but I just can't click it in my head really quickly. The point is, we tend to go, we're comparing oranges and apples. Where did we go? Where did we get the whole democracy from? These are the people we are aspiring to be like. So if we can't compare ourselves to them, then who do we compare ourselves to? That's my point. Is we need to actually start moving away from the whole we're comparing ourselves. If you don't compare yourself to somebody, you don't grow. It is something that we need to actually aspire to do. Let me just make my 2 points, and I'll just be quiet because I try and keep it very short and snappy. I remember about 3 years ago, correct me if I'm wrong, when Martin Amidu came on, I was on this same astute show talking to, I think it was Evans at the time, and we're talking about corruption. And I said, the thing is culturally, just like the guy in the studio said, it is in our culture. We don't reprimand people. Even when politicians make mistakes, we get their chiefs, their hometown chiefs, calling the person who is meant to reprimand him, going, "Oh, he is my granddaughter or my grandson." Just like what happened in the court, tender something with mercy, or whatever they say. We have always tender judgment with mercy.
Exactly.
We always shying away from our responsibilities when it comes to judgment. We don't do that, and that is why, listen, our society, as we look at it, is mostly broken. And simply because we have done that whole tender with mercy.
Force, that's a point very well made. Let me quickly talk to Nana Kwame from Virginia, who has very different perspectives on the conversation we're having so far. Nana Kwame, go ahead.
Yes, my issue is this, okay? Every new institution, to form strong institutions, you need strong people to form those institutions. Institutions do not build themselves. Mr. Amidu had a unique opportunity, once in a lifetime opportunity in Ghana's history, to change the dynamic in our fight against corruption. I fear he's blown that opportunity, and that opportunity might never come around again. That political actors would have pushed back was to be expected. And so for him to have resigned the first time he faced any kind of pushback, for me, is most disappointing. The fact that we have that office created is a huge deal, because politicians don't like to put themselves in a position where someone could come after them. I think we are all missing the point in saying he's a giant, he might be bad, but because he's the first person to have been appointed to that office, he had the opportunity to do what someone like J. Edgar Hoover did for the FBI, which was to build a strong institution, stay in there, take all the punches, roll with the punches, build an institution in the fashion in which he wanted it to be built.
But Nana Kwame, this is a man. this is a man who felt that he was literally being frustrated, and it didn't just start with the Ejapa case. It was the 3-year tug of war about how he's going to be housed, how he's going to be
so
staffed,
now, then you
what
go
kind
back
of car
to,
he's going to use.
If you go back to what the government's response was, it kind of destroys that argument. Granted, he might not have been a great administrator or whatever. My point remains that whatever those frustrations were, I feel very let down by him resigning and this becoming more of a political football, that now whoever is responsible, be it this president or another president who comes in, might feel like I need to put a yes man in that position because I don't want a repetition of this Martin Amidu situation.
That sounds scary, I tell you. Nana Kwame, thank you very much for joining us this evening. He joined us from Virginia. It's 14 minutes to 7 p.m. You're live on Ghana Connect with me, Daniel Dadzie. I'm here in studio with Golda, Esther, Kofi, and connecting via Zoom with George and Foss. So Nana Kwame says, despite all that we've talked about that has gone on, he's still giving away a golden opportunity. Martin Amidu, that is.
I think it depends on whose perspective we're looking at. The man stuck there for over 2 years. Whatever kept him there, and he bore the criticisms and the insults of Ghanaians all this while without saying anything till now that he's left. We would never really fully know the truth. But I don't think that he considered it as golden as we see it. And I think we should not take it for granted that it took him 2 years to decide that I'm now leaving. I don't think that anything that a nation as Ghana puts together and offers to someone as the first of their kind is golden. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of risk. It's uncharted territory. And it's definitely not easy because sometimes they put you up, but they're undermining you. And you can't say it, you can't prove it. So much as on paper it looks beautiful, I think that we really need to pursue the facts of the matter or move beyond into the remedies like you keep saying.
Okay, so let's move into the remedies now. This week I was moderating an event and I asked the Director of Electoral Services at EC how many political parties have submitted their audited accounts. Kofi, he couldn't give me a direct answer. He told me he's forgotten. That's what the Director of Electoral Services told me. Really? But he said that he thinks about 2 have. If we can't confront the simple obedience of the law, submit your audited accounts, and we can't fund political parties when they're campaigning, what are we really talking about?
Well, I think the matter of political party financing or funding, it's a real problem in Ghana. Unlike the US, I'm not comparing oranges with apples, but elsewhere they have proper audited account of their spending activities or their expenses, more like the expenditure of most political parties, and so you're able to track where their fundings are coming from. And if you critically follow Facebook and their political campaigning programs, you realize that if you sponsor an ad, Facebook shows who actually funded it or sponsored it. And so even at that level, even at that digital level, there is that level of transparency. And so someone decides to run for president, we do not know where the person got the money from, wherever. The person comes to power and has to caress or massage some egos and have to satisfy some interest elsewhere. At the end of the day, all of these fall at the expense of the state. And so if I sponsored or funded your campaign with $1 million, and at the end of the day, I am demanding for a contract, you cannot say no to me. And that is where the corruption comes in. When the person breaches procurement protocols or whatever, it means that you cannot touch the person because already more like the person has a finger in
your hand in someone's mouth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Better to put it that way. And so that is the sort of situation we find ourselves in this country. If we are going to fight or deal with the issue of corruption, it must start with political parties even before they get into office.
Okay.
Yes, the funding processes, what really goes into their campaigns and all. And so the EC shouldn't see its major preoccupation as the conduct of elections and so on. They should look at these nitty-gritties and how we can consolidate and fortify our democracy.
But can the EC do that alone, Esther?
Yeah, okay.
Let me allow Esther to come in on that one. It's a huge role, isn't it?
It's a huge role. I think there's, one major thing. I think we have to stop treating accountability like a global pandemic that will catch and then will destroy our ability to elevate into positions of power. And I think we also have to really deal with this addiction to a false narrative about selfless leaders, none of whom have ever existed in life, and certainly not in the world of politics. But you don't need selfless leaders. What you do need to do is to confront the relationship between the executive and power. And unless you're willing to do some separation when it comes to the amount of power the executive holds, you will simply return to this conversation again and again and
because
again.
It's only the executive that can separate that relationship. The least incentivized group to change the system is the one who can change the system.
And that is why there needs to be a forensic examination and a different way. How does any change happen? Change has never happened because of the majority. It's happened because of critical mass as a result of an issue that requires the kind of motion that the people who are incentivized to keep the same will frustrate you about. That's why it's important to explore and examine this specific change in the Constitution.
Okay.
How do you make it happen? You're talking about the bringing together of disparate groups, civil society organizations, activist organizations, independent political organizations, because without that kind of engagement, we will continue to circle back to this same thing. We conflate mercy with mediocrity. And mediocrity flourishes to the extent that it smothers brilliance. Because mediocrity can be family members, friends, all of those different things. And so that relationship is about the pipeline to power. Breaking that down so that we can actually enable a Martin Amadou to flourish, whoever that may be. Because the truth is, appointed by either political side,
this thing could happen again. Look, I just want to, and he resigned. No, he was sacked when he was under the NDC. I just want to repeat what she said. We conflate mercy with mediocrity. I mean, apart from it being nice English, it's very true. This is Ghana Connect. And we've been asking you to connect with us via social media the entire evening. Manuel Kranting, producer of this show, is here to share your thoughts.
So, Daniel, we asked a simple question on Twitter and on Facebook. The question is, what do you do when corruption fights back? The Martin Amadou case. And on Twitter, a number of reactions coming through. This one is from Gasma. Says, simple question. Name and shame before corruption fights you. Don't hold back. Expose them. Hashtag Ghana Connect. And Daniel, you remember that in Martin Amadou's latest, outburst in an interview, he says that they shouldn't push him to, speak out, and that's what Gasma is actually, advising against. That don't hold back, speak out.
So Gasma is basically pushing Martin Amadou. Interesting. Let me read this comment from Don Palmer from London. Greetings to all. Mr. Martin did his job and must be applauded. But I also think he should spill out whatever he knows to make them feel the bitterness they've caused us as a nation. Ghana as a nation can't even do things for its own people without its own money unless we borrow even to build public toilets. God have mercy. Thank you.
Well,
I don't know why you're thanking me after saying that. All right, go ahead, Manuel.
Some more comments at Kobe Success on Twitter says that be strong and courageous and keep your focus. This one says that fight it back and not give up like Martin Amadou. Hashtag Ghana Connect. On Facebook, though, this one says that the catchword is fight. So how do you fight? How do you fight if you're going to, put your hands up in despair? Okay. How do you fight? Daniel,
I'll put myself out there and I say that the mistake that most of our commenters are making is they are reducing it to an individual, which is the point that we started from. Was saying that individuals if Martin Amadou couldn't do it, who can? Let's face it, guys. It's 5 minutes to the top of the hour. I'm going to go around and ask for one thought each from all of my 5 panelists. I'll start from you first. One thought each. Where do we go from here? Martin Amidu has resigned, yes. The Special Prosecutor's Office still needs to be peopled, and we need to fight corruption. So where do we go from here? First, one thought.
Dan, I think we need to do an introspective, really search into ourselves. I am not, I said Martin Amidu has to resign. I would have loved him to be there. To be in it, you have to be in it to win. You have to be in it to fight it. The fact that he's left is not good. But I am going to end my thought is with one question, well, one sentence or a question on it for that matter. I always ask myself, are there enough good people in Ghana to rule and make a difference?
Eerie silence.
Who tend to...
I'll switch to Kofi now. One thought.
Well, I think Martin chose integrity over political expedience. And so, just like the question the gentleman raised, are there, men of decent integrity enough to stand against corruption? That is a big question. And in the future, we anticipate that government won't once again hide behind political propaganda and rhetorics to prove or seem as if they are fighting corruption. We must see the actual fight in the implementation process.
George, what's your thought?
My thought is very simple. We need a constitutional amendment to establish this legally without it being reliant on any political party and their whims and caprices. And we need to have that segregation of powers between that special prosecutor and any government that comes in. That is the only way forward to fight corruption.
Thank you very much, George. My rule is not to engage the thoughts, but let's not forget that we tried to do a constitutional amendment about decentralization in this country. It became another political football, to be fair. Golda, I'll leave Esther for the last. Golda.
I would say that it's not decency that will save any country or any nation. It's the systems and structures. Decency, it doesn't naturally occur. It's the systems and structures that force us to act well and be decent and think. So without that, we're in a hopeless loop. We're not going anywhere. And like you said, the Constitution is the most fundamental instrument that will get us there. And it's closed. There's no room for anybody to change it unless there's a benevolent precedent. And we've not had that. So we're stuck in the loop, and we don't know how we'll come out of it.
Actually, Jonathan Mills tried.
He did.
There was a Constitution Review Commission, great recommendations there. They have not seen the light of day. I have lawyer friends who wail at me every day they see me. And they say, Daniel, we should be leading this conversation. We should be talking about that Constitution Review.
I spent an entire year going around the country on this issue.
The Constitution Review.
Yeah.
Wow, amazing.
So it's a closed loop.
Asamo. Esther.
Greatness will always come at a cost. Our lesson is to fight differently, to approach this in a way that doesn't recycle old arguments and old questions for which we've all heard the answers. How was the Constitution created in the first place? How? Part of fighting differently is to say that if what you have done has not worked, we have to be willing to look at a different way to make it work. Because if we recognize that it is the separation of power that will enable a corruption system to begin to be built, the question is to examine the creation of that outside of what we looked at so far. Final thought is the most important thing Martin Amidu's resignation offers us is an obituary in the limitations of an individual, no matter how great, when they come up against an institution that does not know party, but understands power. And that's what it respects.
Amazing. I'm going to try and summarize the conversation in 2 key statements that have stuck out to me. The first, and I've been owing an iron over it, is that we conflate mercy with mediocrity. The second is what Golda said. You said decency doesn't save a nation.
No, it does not come naturally.
Decency doesn't come naturally.
No. It's systems and structures.
Decency doesn't come naturally. It's systems and structures
that bring it. Yeah.
You see,
decency doesn't save nations.
Yeah, you did say decency doesn't save. We can't save a nation by being
systems and structures
by being nice.
Yes.
You can't save a country by being nice.
Yeah.
Very gendered approach as well.
Yes.
It's exactly 7 p.m. It's time for us to make way for the Joy Sports team. George Dadzie Jr. getting ready to bring us Locker Room. Let me say a big thank you to Foss connecting with us from the UK, George connecting with us from the US, Kofi in studio, Golda, and Esther as well. My name is Daniel Dadzie. If this conversation has done anything for you, let it continue a conversation about what real solutions are. Let's move Ghana from railing about problems and thinking about real solutions. I wish, for instance, that you could pick up a phone and call your member of parliament and ask him, are we seriously going to say that we can't get an independent special prosecutor to work without intimidation in this country? I wish you could call him and ask him and see if he can give you a good answer. My name is Daniel Dadzie. Many thanks to Manuel Cranting and Ernest Mini for doing the production. Macrahon.
Hello, you're from